We don't want you slowing down the race. We want you to run steady. So we start smart, right, conservatively. Then we build to steady by mile 6. And a steady inside our world is just a little bit faster than that steady pace that you wanted to have. So if 10s was the goal, you ran slower than 10s for the first 6, you're going to run 9:55s, maybe some 9:50s in there for the body of your race, those middle 12 miles, say. And then at some point in there, you're going to hit the wall close to the end of that. And then you have to get to the finish. Now, with the slower start, but the slightly faster body of your race, you're right around the average pace of 10 minutes per mile, maybe even a little bit faster. Now you've got about 8 miles or maybe 6 miles, maybe 5 miles to get to the finish, but you're in a position to get to the finish from there. And you've done so in a smart way that has not really put you in a bad place from a metabolic standpoint, from a heart rate standpoint, from an energy standpoint. And as a result, you're more likely to be able to finish. A lot of people, as I see here in the comments, sidelined by cramps, bunks, having problems at the end, and unfortunately, a lot of times that's a result of just poor execution on the front end. It could also be nutrition, the conditions. I don't want to take away from that, the challenges of the course. But a lot of times it's because people didn't execute well on the front end. Okay. So what are some permutations you need to take into consideration with this guidance? Well, if you're injured, obviously you need to reframe your goals right from the start. Take it easy on yourself. If you got a bum leg, there's no point in trying to kill yourself into a fast race. Temperatures are high. Really make sure your hydration plan is on point. You've got salts. You're wearing the proper gear to stay cool. For the most part, you should still be able to run your paces unless it's off the charts hot or humid. You should be able to stick with your paces. If you have a nutrition meltdown, well, obviously you'd practice with your race simulation runs. It's a great time to practice your marathon nutrition plan as well. The easiest way to fix that, of course, is simply slow down. Rather you take 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes proactively now and solve it, then ignore that problem because it's not going to go away and then have to stop and slow down for the last 6 miles of your race, which is really a problem. Okay. In terms of high heart rate, if you're running and you're at the pace that you want to be at, but the heart rate is off the charts, then you need to adjust as well. And my basic rule of thumb here is about 6 beats. So if the pace you're running at in those middle 12 miles, you normally see 145 beats per minute on the heart rate monitor. If you're seeing 150, you're still okay. But if you're starting to see 151, 155, heart rate's going up, but you're staying at the same pace and it's early in your day, don't feel so great about it, I would definitely back down. Remember, you may be chasing a time, but your race may have something else entirely different in mind for you. The day could be very challenging. There could be headwinds, things you may not be aware of. Maybe the Gatorade mixture at the aid stations isn't the proper concentration. You're not getting the calories you need. You can only do the best you can with what you've got. Again, rather you be conservative and smart on the front end and survive well at the end. Lots of great questions coming in, folks. I'm going to get to some of them. Please keep those questions coming. They're awesome. So, running steady and running hills. Let's talk real quickly about this. The reasons why we run steady, like I mentioned earlier, was we minimize the metabolic cost of running. A very stochastic or up and down surgy type of running in the beginning of a race is going to spike heart rate. And that heart rate does not come down as you continue a steady pace through the course of your day. It only goes up. And so that kind of pacing sets you up for failure because you haven't trained to those intensity levels before. On top of that, an easy pace on the front end makes it easier for you to start eating and fueling well, getting a good rhythm. So you're not so worried about the pace. You're worried about managing the aid stations, getting in some good fluids. By the time you're thirsty at mile 18, drinking at mile 18 is not really going to help you. It's what you drink at like mile 10, 12 that's really getting in your body by mile 18. And you have to have a good rhythm in place. And we do that by starting off steady. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about, Mr. Roadrunner and what it means in terms of running. Mr. Roadrunner, like I mentioned earlier, takes off a shot out of a cannon at the start of the race. You don't. You're smart. You're very slow, and you build into your steady pace. At the aid stations, Mr. Roadrunner runs through them like it's a local 5K, knocking water out of people's hands, can't grab it, missing a gel, making it super fast. You are focused and deliberate, getting in the fuel that you need, and knowing that what you're doing right now is making an investment in the future of your race, or perhaps even carry your fluids and fuel with you. And then also on the hills and the headwinds, that Roadrunner will surge away from you. They're running 9-minute miles and the hill comes in their way. They want to stay on 9-minute miles, so they have to run harder to hold that 9. You are smarter than that. You run steady, and as a result, you may slow down a little bit on the hill. Halfway through the hill, they're going to slow down because they can't sustain that pace either, and you'll pass them either by the top or somewhere down the other side or even later in the race. Same goes for a headwind. The headwind is just a hill, a little slightly more secretive. You want to pace yourself well, understanding that there is resistance and it's going to affect your pace. Now, talking about pacing in hills, what that means, I'll have more guidance coming out specifically about this soon enough. And if you really want to geek out about it, resources are out there. But in general, I tell people as a rule of thumb, you're running, say, 9-minute miles. You know what a 9-minute mile feels like. When you hit a sustained hill, you want to keep that same effort of running going, knowing that your pace is going to slow down a bit. I liken it to the days when we used to own a Prius hybrid. I had that miles per gallon all the time. When I would be driving on a flat road at 50 miles an hour, I could see the gas that I was burning. When the road went up, I naturally would step on the gas to stay driving 50. I don't want to slow down and get in other people's way. And what I would notice is the miles per gallon would plummet, would shoot off the charts, right? But if I went into that same hill and kept my foot at the same place on the gas pedal, miles per gallon was the same, but my speed would slow down. I would go from 50 to 45 to 40 to 35 until my wife would yell at me. We had a bad game where we tried to see who had the best miles per gallon at the end of each leg of the trip. But the point being, you want to be that Prius. You want to be that Roadrunner, being steady up those hills, easing off a little bit, holding what it feels like to run 9-minute miles so that you're not spiking your heart rate. Because, again, you can't get that ever back at the end of your race. I'll have some more detailed guidance on that later. And like I said, there are some things out that you can look at. But that's basically what you want to think of. Now talk a little bit about aid stations and pacing very quickly here. Early on, the aid stations are a whip. They slow you down. Later on, those aid stations are a carrot. You got to get to the next one. When your world closes in on you, you're just trying to get to that next aid station. Forget about 26.2. Sometimes it's just about getting from 21 to 22. Aid stations are your carrot. Know the aid stations, know what's there beforehand in the race. Do that assessment the first 6 miles when you're not focused on pacing. Understand what's at each aid station so you're ready for it. And then also go into each aid station knowing what you need. Pick the right person. Get the cup you need. If you need to stop, find a place to stop. If you have to stop, limit yourself to about 30 steps, count them, and get back to running. The more time you spend walking and treating it like a buffet, the more time you will walk, more time you lose, harder it is to get back to running. So focus that effort. Stay counting on 30 steps or whatever it is to you. Pick a concrete point where you're going to start again and get back to it. As I mentioned earlier, start early in the day with the aid stations. Don't wait till later when it's too late. And then plan ahead. Like I said, know what you need before you get to the aid station, but also know what's available for you on the course. Aid stations are there and they are your friend, so take care of yourself. To wrap up my thoughts before I get into some of your questions here, you want to know your fitness. That's what that 5K test is for. You want to know what your accuracy factor is between the two by saying, this is my training pace for my 5K, and that's the pace that I train to on a daily basis. But when I'm racing, this is how I actually calibrate my 5K VDOT. By massaging it with these numbers, whether it's 0.25 or 0.2, etc. I want you to train like you race. Don't wait until the last minute to start thinking about what you're going to do on race day. Start from day one and formulate your training around that point. Even if you don't follow the guidance, but if you're crazy enough to say, even though I ran 4.5 hours last time, I'm going to go 3:45, well then do it. Start training to that number. See if you can do it. You'll get feedback very early on. And better to get that feedback in training, we can adjust, or take up your cell phone and call someone to come and get you, than in the middle of a race, when that's not a great place to have to deal with those problems. You prove your fitness before you advance to the next level. So I know a lot of people will say, but I can run that faster. I want to be able to run that 5K VDOT split for a full marathon. I want you to as well. But before you do that, before you roll those dice, I encourage you to try it this way once. And then the next time you can go back and be a little more aggressive with your pacing. But it's always better to be a little bit conservative. Come back to me and say, Patrick, I ran a steady race. I was smart at the start. I was steady through. I didn't really bonk. I didn't really slow down. I had a good race. But I went 4:24 and I wanted to go 4:19. I'm really upset with you. Like, I'll take that. You can be mad at me at that case, right? Because outside of your situation, I could probably point to 500 runners who also wanted to run 4:20, but ended up running anywhere from 4:40 to 5:15 because they didn't pace themselves well. So I'll take that. And then, of course, at the end of the day, it's fun. Got to smile. Got to have fun, okay? So question and answers, put them in the chat boxes on the side. I've got lots of stuff here to talk about, to talk to. And so please bring those out. If you need to email them away as well, okay? I'm going to leave the screen up as I go back. There's a lot of questions coming in, so please, 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 please drop them in. I'm going to pick it up from the top here, kind of scroll through as I see here. A great question from Cindy. Cindy said, when training, should I work on distance first or speed? And what's the best way to train speed once I have distance down? A great question, and really kind of gets to the heart of how we train inside Marathon Nation. I'm actually I'm not really that concerned about volume. I know marathon training is all about volume. I did this long run, that long run. But when you start thinking about the 5K test and the VDOT that comes from that as dictating your training paces, it's really what you can do in those shorter sessions that are a function of fast. When you look at fitness as the ability to do work, a long run isn't necessarily that hard. A long run gets hard at the end of the day, but actually running fast is hard, right? Like I'd take an 18-mile long run any day over doing insane 800, or half-mile repeats on a track till I puke, right? That's really hard. That's crazy hard. The long run is tough at the end of the day. It's mentally challenging.